there can be a feeling of, I don't know who I am, or I don't dare to creatively express it. And there can be a kind of muting of the radiance, or a muting of the, really the feeling like I don't know who I am, or I don't know how to, or I do know who I am, I think, but I don't know how to get it out there. So there's a lot of questioning of the self, and there can be a sort of sitting on of the creative impulse. And it's like having Saturn in the 5th house. You can either have incredible disciplined creativity, or you can feel like it's really hard to give birth to anything. Do you know? Because with Saturn in the 5th house, you might have no children, you might have very few children, or you might creatively have no children or very few children. Or you might say, I'm sick of this, I'm breathing in my authority, and I'm going to create something. And then you go with gangbusters, because when you have Saturn with Leo and you say yes to that, then you have the powerful sort of will and power along with the heart. So, do you relate to that? Yeah. Plus Peg's got Saturn in the 12th house, so it's even more hidden. So she's going to come surging out very shortly. If you think about the fact that like a Leo walks in the room, anytime you're at a party and somebody walks in and is just like, you just ask them if they're a Leo, if they're just shining and everybody's like, who's that? Right? Because they've got this they take up a lot of space. They're like spotlighted. Well, if you have Saturn and Leo, you might be the person that's like, how do I do that? There's a desire to take up space that way. There's maybe even sometimes like, that's too much. That shouldn't be. It could be that, and the real desire, the desire to shine forth. Okay, so what about Saturn in Aquarius, or the 11th house? You have it in the 11th house. Saturn in Aquarius, Saturn in Aquarius, Saturn in the 11th house. Okay, we have lots of, Saturn in Aquarius. It's very interesting, Saturn in Aquarius, because it's a combination of the old and the new, right? Because Saturn is the old and Aquarius wants to bring in the new. And you could say that on one hand, you could have a fear of community, because Aquarius rules community, or fear of the group, or not even fear, but how do I fit in? Because Aquarians also like to be different. They like to be unusual. They like to stand out stand out in a group. You could have incredible responsibility within a group. Saturn is responsibility. You could always be the one that's given responsibility. You could have a lot of energy about fear of freedom. This is a strange way of saying it, but fear of the fear of the road less traveled. Like if you're a Capricorn, but you have Saturn in Aquarius, like there's the part of you that's incredibly traditional, or much more like, this is the right way to do things. And then there's the part of you that maybe yearns for the non-traditional, but has that battle a little bit. Does that feel, yeah? Okay. Amazing. Yeah, but it's interesting, because here we have, Robin's got Capricorn. She's a Capricorn sun. So Saturn is her ruling planet. So then we go, well, where is Saturn? Well, Saturn's in Aquarius. So, she wants to take this Capricorn energy of responsibility and duty, and she wants to pour it into something that's actually maybe non-traditional, but it's terrifying. Do you feel that? Do you get it? So, do you relate to that, or other Saturn and Aquarius person? You?
Yes. Well, not the same way.
Yeah, no, but in a different way. I mean, I think a lot of times with Saturn and Aquarius, it's something about learning how to, like, the Scorpio energy, which is square, in other words, in a difficult position with Aquarius, is very personal. And Aquarius is very group-oriented, and they're both very fixed. And so sometimes it's about learning to have the group dynamic. And I think that, in acting, definitely, we experience the responsibility to the ensemble, the responsibility to the group. Yeah. We skipped you. You have Saturn in the 5th house.
Well, I'm a little
Since I'm so new at it, I'm not quite sure.
Read the first one. You have Saturn. Don't you have Saturn in the 5th house in Pisces? Is that right?
Yes.
Okay.
But I didn't say, well, where's the Aquarius?
Okay. You don't have the Aquarius. Yeah, you are an Aquarius.
Yes,
Yes. You are an Aquarius.
Okay.
So we're just talking about. So yeah. So you definitely have that spirit of the unconventional and doing things a different way and taking the road less traveled and breaking with tradition. You didn't do any of that, did you?
No.
Left Texas behind. So no, but you do have Saturn in the 5th house, which is that feeling of wanting to shine forth and do I dare? And yes, you dare. Yes, you dare.
Or am I too old? That's all.
No. And it's wherever it is, it's a responsibility to yourself to do that thing. It's a responsibility to 4th house, build a home, a foundation. It's a responsibility, 5th house, to creatively express. It's a responsibility, 11th house, to engage in the group process, to envision the new in a very purposeful way. See, 11th house is purpose. And 11th house is envisioning the new. It's the dreamer, right? And Saturn says, I'm gonna really seriously envision the new. I'm gonna take responsibility to bring down the new. Did you relate to that in the 11th house? Okay. Yeah, fear of loneliness, of being deserted, fear of being the outsider, because there's this desire to innovate, but then the fear of what will happen if I do. This desire to be unusual, but the fear of, will I be accepted by the group or will I be a lone wolf? And in each of these, what's so nice is we go to the liberation, or we go to the aspect of yourself that what happens if you really do free yourself up? And if you do free yourself up in Aquarius, you have a mature and relaxed manner of living out independence and your peculiar characteristics. You can be an inventor, you can have truly innovative inventions, you can thrive within the group. Okay. Saturn in Virgo. Anybody have nobody has Saturn in Virgo, but Saturn in the 6th house. Yes, I knew it was one of you. Saturn in the 6th house. Transiting. Okay. And by the way, was anybody having transiting Saturn to the 11th or transiting Saturn to the 5th?
The 11th.
To the 11th. So transiting Saturn to the 5th. Transiting Saturn to the 11th. What would that look like, based on what I just told you? Transiting Saturn to the 11th.
Opportunity to work with the groups.
Yes, perfect. Opportunity to work with new responsibilities within groups, new taking on leadership roles within groups, or choosing what friends you really want to spend time with and not spending time with others, because Saturn can bring in conflicts with friends or issues with friends, Also, Saturn in Aquarius, there can be, throughout your life, you can have interesting issues in friendships, because Aquarius rules friendships. But when Saturn goes into the 11th, I always say it's your time to take on responsibility in the group, And it's your time to figure out what group you want to belong to, what community you want to belong to, So now 6th house. We have 6th house, and we have Saturn in Virgo. So Saturn in Virgo, they're a very hard worker and demands great perfection. Because the fear is it will never be perfect enough. It will never, that I won't deliver it as perfectly as I envision it. And there's a real idea of what wants to be birthed, and Saturn has a fear that it won't come out in the way that it should. And so you can overly manage sometimes, or you can get in your head way too much and analyze it to pieces, because Virgo is the sign that discriminates and analyzes and takes things apart. So there's a great desire for perfection and analyzing and dissecting, and there's also a great desire to understand how a system works. And there's also can be huge fear of health issues when you have Saturn in the 6th house or Saturn in Virgo. There can be unfounded or, from your past, founded fears about anything to do with health, because the 6th house rules health. Or you can be very serious about your health. You can be very serious about taking care of yourself, right? What else do we have here that we can? Fear of tests. I got Saturn and Virgo, fear of tests. Fear of being awkward or inappropriate, fear of illness, right? And then so you go to perfectionism. And when it's really working, you are very good at purifying the physical body, and you're very good at working sensibly with the physical body, and you're very good at having a healthy approach. When you have Saturn in the 6th house, sometimes your day-to-day jobs are sort of annoying or overly responsible, or there's lots of tests in them, or there's tests within the workplace with your coworkers. It's like it's not always ideal, or you're given always a lot of responsibility in that area. And there's a great purposeful energy about how do I purify? How do I make the most of my life? How do I separate the wheat from the chaff in my life? You know, and there's a lot of that concentrated, like, does that respond? Yes. And then, and does anybody have Saturn transiting the 6th? You have Saturn transiting the 6th. Okay, so it's a time. Did I say it's just transiting, or did it just enter, or we don't know? Transiting. Okay, so it's whenever Saturn's in the 6th house, it's the time to pay attention to your energy. In other words, to pay attention to your health. To if there's something that you need to like implement, like I'm doing yoga Monday, Wednesday, and Friday, or whatever it is, it's a real time to pay attention to those things. And you also might get so fed up with your day-to-day work that something has to change. You know, where you're like, and you know, there's tests here, and I'm going to need to breathe in my authority and make a change. Sometimes when Saturn's in the 6th. But whenever Saturn's in the 6th, I'm like, make sure you buck up your system, you know, take your vitamins all along, because there can be physical health tests as well. Okay, and then finally Saturn in Pisces. Saturn in Pisces. Who has Saturn in Pisces?
12th house.
Okay, you have Saturn in the 12th house. You have Saturn in Pisces. Saturn
12th house.
12th house. Okay, good. Saturn in Pisces is like having Saturn sitting next to Neptune. And Neptune is the dreamer, and Neptune is the planet of fantasy and illusion and imagination. So when Saturn sits next to that planet, it can feel first like a damper on that, like it says no to those things. And so you can feel isolated or sad. But ultimately what it can do is help you build your dreams. And the thing with Saturn in Pisces is it's all about to what am I connected? Because to what source am I connected to? How am I connected to source? Or am I just alone here? There's a feeling of like a little bit of hesitation around vastness, you know, like the ocean of Neptune, and feeling like you're in your little boat there a little bit, you know, alone.